You've probably heard about tourism in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. I myself have been there several times, and it is nothing like what you see in video games or horror movies. There are no mutant ghosts or radioactive anomalies, and death does not await you around every corner. In fact, I think it is one of the most peaceful and beautiful places on Earth, an example of the force of nature and how it can reverse the damage we caused to it. So, when my friend Alexei decided to go there, he knew who to turn to. He is a physics student and is doing research on radioactive fallout. He told me he wanted to have some direct measurements and samples, but we both knew it was just an excuse to go on an adventure. We visited the old power plant, the abandoned city of Pripyat and the surrounding exclusion zone. It was beautiful, but I would probably bore you with more details. In any case, that part is not the important thing. We were driving on some dirt roads in a forest east of Pripyat when we found an old fence, rusty, and a chained gate. Blocked the pass. There was a large sign with a radiation hazard symbol, and the notice restricted area only authorized personnel. Huge metal-armored doors on the side of a hill, not far behind the fence. They had a large U-213 painted in white, and no entry allowed on the top. "What do you think it is?" asked Alex. "I don't know. It looks like some kind of bunker," I replied. "And it looks like it's been closed for some time." I added, after looking more closely at the doors, the two halves were welded in the center. He took his samples and readings, but we were too intrigued to leave. "Do you think we could get in?" I asked. "Well, this way, for short. Not even if it wasn't welded shut. I doubt we have a way to unlock it." Alex replied, as he examined the huge door. "It looks like an underground bunker. They must have some way to pump air inside, and I don't think it's through here. There has to be another entrance." I said we went around the main entrance to try to find other accesses. The day was already coming to an end, and it was starting to get dark as we searched. A thought crossed my mind. Why would they have welded the doors shut? What is so important inside that they went to such lengths to keep people out? Look, there is something out of my thoughts. It was a concrete block, about 2 meters in size, with what looked like vents on the sides. Looking inside, I noticed they were also sealed with solid-looking steel trap doors with no clear way to open them. However, there was a smaller door, labeled service tunnel, with a large wheel on the outside. I opened it. I asked, "Yes, I am curious to know what this is. We might not even have to go in. We will just see if the door still works." At first the wheel would not turn due to rust and dirt, but eventually it gave way. I pulled and the door started to open slowly. It was very heavy and required a lot of strength. Behind the door was a small platform and a narrow vertical tunnel with a ladder. What caught my attention the most was that there was an identical locking mechanism inside, which meant that they could lock the door from both sides. But why were we lucky? Because if I had also locked it from the inside, there would be no way in. I went in and shined the light from my phone. It was not strong enough to illuminate the bottom. The air was humid and old, with a slight chemical smell that I could not identify. There was no radiation or signs of other danger apparent. "This is incredible. We have to go back and explore it." "Calmly," said Alex. I couldn't agree more. It was almost nighttime, so we closed the door and called it a day. When I got home, I tried to investigate a little, but without success. I even called Pavel, a friend who knew the area better than me. It was he who took me there for the first time. He couldn't help me either, but promised to ask around. I told him our plan and asked him if he wanted to come with us. but unfortunately he was out of the country for a while. A week later we gathered our equipment and got to work. We carried rope flashlights, powerful glow sticks, Geiger counters, waterproof protective clothing, an oxygen meter, and a small emergency diving bottle, just in case. And yes, we are not reckless, so we told our family and friends about our trip, and when we expected to return, we closed the door ourselves and began to descend through the access shaft. We couldn't know what was down there, and we didn't want to cause a radiation leak or something similar. We finally reached a concrete tunnel that housed the ventilation ducts and some smaller pipes. Obviously, there was no electricity, and therefore no light either. Luckily, we had our own flashlights, the tunnel until we reached another door. This time, a door normal, not the bunker type. We went through it and entered a room with 4 large air pumps and some electrical equipment and controls. The ventilation ducts were divided into 2 larger ones that went straight to the floor, and 2 smaller ones that went through the room where there was another set of doors. Behind those doors was a large hallway filled with boxes, crates, and other types of cargo. There was also a security checkpoint behind the checkpoint. We found the main door we had seen from the outside. Right next to it was a heavy lifting equipment. We went back to the checkpoint, and we took a look at a set of elevators. There was a simple map that showed the layout of the facilities floor by floor. We were on floor 0, the main entrance hall, and there were 4 other floors below us. Floor -1, offices, security, and recreation. Floor -2, security laboratories. OS3, accelerator decontamination chamber. Clean room floor, -1, experimentation area. The map was titled Object 13. It was not a military bunker. It was an action center. We decided to go down up the stairs, since the elevators were not working without electricity. As I descended, a disturbing thought crossed my mind. They were probably moving some supplies. They left them there, and then took the equipment to the main door. They were trying to escape. As I stepped another step, something rolled under my foot. I lost my balance and fell on my back. Luckily, my backpack cushioned the blow. I looked below to see what had caused the fall: empty bullet casings. This was not the only reason why I felt a strange uneasiness in that place. When I reached the level -1, I noticed that all the doors were open. There was a canteen and a kitchen at the beginning of a long rectangular hallway surrounded by offices. Everything seemed intact. Papers, old computers, personal effects, just as they left them. They had left in a hurry. Dmitri called me from the canteen. Across the hall, what I answered as I followed him to the canteen. There was still food served on the tables? No. It was rotten, but not fresh either. It did not look like food that had been there for 30 years. How is it possible? I asked. I have no idea. Maybe it was irradiated or something, but it isn't anymore. Check it out, just as confused as I was. Why didn't we just turn around and leave? Now that I think about it, there were already too many warning signs. Something very bad had happened there. I guess our curiosity and excitement were stronger. But it was at that moment when my enthusiasm began to fade, replaced by a growing uneasiness. Still, we continued and descended to the lowest level, where the staircase ended there. And to go down further, we had to cross the entire floor until we reached another staircase on the opposite side. There was a security post and a large armored door that we had to cross to enter the laboratories again. All the doors were open. However, the objects were not in their places. Everything was chaos. There were rooms with equipment that I didn't understand, and from time to time more bullet casings on the floor. The hallway followed the rectangular design, but the rooms surrounding it that formed a small labyrinth on the other side of the floor. We found the chief scientist's office, as I mentioned. Everything was in disarray, but on the desk was a logbook. It only had a few pages, as the rest were torn out. October 5, 1984. Today, we successfully translocated several atoms without alterations in their physical properties. We are still a long way from being able to transport solid objects, but we are moving forward. January 17th, 1985. Today, we transported an apple. I noticed that the pattern of its red and green skin had some differences, but it was still the same apple with the same structure and shape. We also tested electronic deposits that arrived intact. There is still much to learn about this technology, but the country trusts us. February 21st, 1985. After testing with animals, we translocated our first human. Today he is alive and well, a true hero of the nation. This technology works. Although it is still limited, we cannot send matter-only exchange the position of two objects of equal mass. I proposed a new device to allow unidirectional translocation, but it requires an enormous amount of energy. May 1st, 1985. Our superiors, they approved my proposal. They will build a new translocator here at the plant to use a nuclear reactor as a power source. Directly, we have translocated dozens of test subjects. They are all fine, although some have differences. Some mention past events that occurred differently, or talk about non-existent people. Something alarming. Test subject 28 started speaking an unknown language and did not understand any other language after the experiment. After that entry, many pages were torn out. 5 of them, April 1986. We are going to change our approach. It has been over a year, and we still cannot eliminate the symmetry anomaly in the translocation. Today, we will try to access the reality of the conduit. Although, Unit 2, we built at the Central is new. We will use it for this experiment. What wonders await us on the other side? On the last page, there was a phrase, over and over. We let them in, Alex. I think we should go. I said with concern, Uncle, come a look at this. He replied. I left the lab and went back to the hallway. There were clothes all over the hallway, or better said, what was left of them. Shreds of cloth, some shoes, watches. There were no bodies or blood, just remnants of clothing and inorganic materials. I felt a visceral panic that paralyzed me. I looked at the dark hallway in front of me, unable to move or breathe. Let's get out of here, he said. Alex, we turned around and began to walk away. At first we walked slowly, but soon we sped up the sound of our footsteps. I was lying in the underground structure. I just want to get out of here, Uncle. We shouldn't have do this. He said. Alex, I didn't tell him about the logbook, but my thoughts were suddenly interrupted. His voice. It didn't echo. Only our footsteps could be heard. I think he noticed it too, because we both stopped and heard nothing. Just silence. I took a step forward. I took another step. There was a door right in front of us, and I decided to try something. I closed it as I passed and placed a glass cup that I found on the floor on top of the handle. I took a step forward. Silence after all. It was just the echo, I thought. We kept moving forward at first, cautiously, but then we quickened our steps, we turned a corner, and then it happened. The glass shattered. Someone or something had just opened the door. We dropped all our equipment except the flashlights, and we ran as fast as we could. I never knew I could run so fast, always be a tough guy. But I've never been so scared in my life. Our footsteps no longer echoed, or rather the echo was no longer synchronized with us. Something was chasing us and getting closer, every second, getting closer. When we got to security, we started to close the door. The rusty door seals squeaked in protest, but we pulled with all our might. We had almost closed it when we heard a loud, guttural, unnatural growl. The door slammed shut, and let's make sure it wasn't my heart. It was that thing slamming on the armored door. We ran again. We got to the stairs and jumped up, 2 to 3 steps at a time. We finally got to the air pump room. The climb exhausted us, and even though I was scared to death, I felt like I would faint if I took another step. Plus, we had already closed the door downstairs. Alex sat down and leaned against one of the large vertical vents with a slam. Oh, damn. We closed it down there, but we forgot about the vents. Alex and I looked at each other. Our eyes met, and then the vent blew up, and he disappeared. I could only hear his screams as they dragged him down. I feel terrible for having done this, but I ran up the service duct and closed the emergency door as soon as I managed to get out of that hell. As soon as I got the signal back, my phone started ringing with a bunch of missed calls and messages from Pable. Hey, Dimitri. I found someone who says he knows what the other is. Please answer as soon as you can. He says it's dangerous, and that you shouldn't get involved. This guy is calling me. Now he sounds serious. Call me right away. I don't know what's going on, but he is going there. Please, I hope you see this before you go down. Take care. Friend, there was also a message from an unknown number. Dimitri, I'm Anatoly Moro. I know what you found, and I'm on my way from Kiev. Now don't go down there. If you already went in and managed to get out, close the door you came in through, and make sure it stays closed. I'll try to call you when I get here. I'm writing this while I wait. I do it to make sure that no one else repeats our mistake. Because I don't know if I'll live long enough to tell anyone in person. I can't leave Alex behind. I have to go back. Damn college students. What does the sign on the fence say? No trespassing. What does this say here? He pointed at the text painted on the front door. No entry. Do you think we put them because we have nothing better to do? Like, you have nothing else to do than stick your nose where it doesn't belong. He sighed. Now look what happened. Look what you did. What your brilliant idea brought us. Moroz yelled at me when I finished explaining what happened. The first thing he did when he arrived was check the service tunnel and make sure it was closed. He didn't even look at me. He just ran over there to check that everything was sealed. He was a normal-looking guy, maybe about 50 years old, but anyone would say he looked older than he really was. What is this place? I asked him. You have no idea. He answered, getting up and heading towards his car. What are you doing? I'm going to save your friend, and you're coming with me. You'll do exactly what I say, and nothing else. Don't make noise. Try not to exhaust yourself here. The air doesn't circulate well, and if you burn all the oxygen, you'll suffocate. You'll stay tied to me with this rope. He lifted what looked like a retractable winch when I turn off my light. You do the same thing immediately and don't move. Then he pulled a shotgun out of the trunk. That'll help. I asked to a certain extent, but don't use it. Unless I tell you to. He handed over a pistol. One last thing. Do you know what ozone smells like? I nodded. Okay, if you smell ozone, run. I started to question if it was a good idea when he chained and locked the door from the inside with a huge padlock. It's the only way to keep them from getting out. He explained when he noticed my look. Of course, it was a bad idea. The worst I've ever had. So rather I was doubting if I would ever see that open padlock again. I'm not going to have a key, I asked, watching as he closed it with a loud click. Sorry, I only have one, but don't worry, I'm here, he said, sliding his hand along the rope that connected us. The rope went back and forth between us as we moved through the service tunnel. It gave me a certain feeling of security, impossible to get lost or separated from the only person nearby. It created a strange rhythm, along with the echo of the fuel splashing in the large wine bottles we were carrying. Our first stop would be the generator room. On the other side of the main hall, the generator beeped and hummed. As it began to slowly turn, you saw it. Morrow asked, "What thing do we have a moment to talk until it starts? Did you manage to see what took your friend?" I didn't answer. "What is this place?" I asked. Again he sighed, and looking into the air, he explained to me. Originally, this was a military depot in the 50s. In the late 70s, they turned it into a research center. Everything that was too dangerous for people to know was done here, and sometimes it was very dark. Then they started a project on teleportation. Even they rebuilt part of the facility to house it. And it was then when everything went to hell. "How do you know all this?" I asked. "I worked here," he answered. "So what are those things?" I asked him. "Are they started?" But then he stopped. "I don't know, I was just an assistant." "Is there anyone who knows any more?" "Not everyone who knew well. Let's just say they never got out of here." "And you? How did you get out?" The engine clutch engaged with a click, and the generator finally came to life. "I didn't get out. I took the day off. Sick when it happened." The lights flickered for a moment, and then went out when a circuit breaker tripped. "Nothing happens. We can't waste energy on the lights. Well, need it somewhere else. You'll see," Moroz said. "Whatever happened here, what killed all those people? And God knows how this relates to the Chernobyl disaster. He wasn't here. He took a sick day. He took a damn day off. Come on, boy. Let's go." We got to the security checkpoint of the lab that Alex and I had closed earlier during our escape. "Remember, stay as quiet as you can now," Moroz told me, and we slowly opened the armored door. To our surprise, a bright light instantly blinded us, pointing directly at us. I took a step back as my eyes adjusted, and finally saw where the light came from. Alex's flashlight. I went to pick it up, but Morrow quickly stopped me and pointed into the darkness of the hallway. For a moment we were silent, and then I heard something in the distance. Morrow immediately turned off his flashlight and gestured for me to do the same. As he crouched in a corner, I followed him and turned off my light. But we were still illuminated. Alex's flashlight was still on, lighting up the room. Morrow cursed under his breath. He hurried to pick up the flashlight, and then everything went completely dark. Dark. They say that when you are stressed and you lose one of your senses, the others sharpen to compensate. Is it true? Or maybe that thing was nearby. Never mind. I heard something fall to the floor with a thud. Then irregular steps. They weren't the steps of someone wearing shoes. They looked like bare feet, flesh against cement, and they were getting closer and closer. I instinctively grabbed the gun that Moroz had given me, hoping not to have to use it. It was so close, I could hear his slow and rough breathing. I think I even felt a cold breeze on my face. Inhale and exhale, inhale and exhale. I don't want to imagine how close it was. Then something hit the wall where we had passed with a bang, and the sound of glass and plastic breaking. Whatever was following us turned and chased it. I thought it was gone, that I was safe. Suddenly a hand brushed me. I was about to jump and scream, but the hand moved quickly to cover my mouth, preventing me from making noise. Another hand took the gun from me. "It's me. Follow me slowly," he whispered in my ear. We entered a side room and I heard, like a pea. The door closed softly. We waited a moment and turned the lights back on. "Don't do that again," I told him. But he didn't listen to me. He looked at some drops of a thick black liquid on the floor on the other side of the room. "What is that?" I asked him, blood at least. "It was once." Morrow answered and began to follow the trail. We followed it through several rooms until we reached a large chemical laboratory. On the floor, on a puddle of black liquid, was Alex's knife. There was also some red liquid, fresh blood. No doubt some drops followed a trail in the opposite direction to the black liquid. "Look, he must have escaped," I whispered. "I doubt it. If we want to find him, we have to go to the lowest level." Quo looked at the knife, and then acted as if he hadn't seen anything. "Look, it's his knife. They must have fought here." And he went in that direction. I pointed the trail of blood. "He must be injured. That's one more reason not to waste time. Let's go." We went back to the central hallway. I wanted to stay and look for Alex, but the strap that joined us didn't let me aloud, so I obeyed him at first. "Moroz, please tell me what's going on. How do you know he's not here?" "Because I know it." "Shut up, we don't have time to argue anymore. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me." "Why are you so sure?" I insisted. "Because he's dead." "What?" "But you said, come on. Let's go. This is no place to stay. We have to go down to the level less." Kumaroz cut me off. At first I trusted him because he was the only one who could help me find Alex. That was all I cared about, saving him. But I was realizing what I had gotten myself into, how blind I was. Moroz wasn't just a helper, and we weren't here to save Alex. I started to unbuckle my side of the belt. "What the hell are you doing?" he asked, raising my voice. "I'm going out. Give me the key to the padlock," I demanded. "No, I can't do that," he said with a tense voice. I had no choice. I pointed my gun at him. "Give me the key." I really insisted. "Do you think I would give you a working gun?" "You're not going anywhere," he said, pointing his shotgun at me. I pulled the trigger, but only a click sounded. "Damn. Why are we here? Why didn't you call your superiors or whoever to take care of this? Why do you have to hold me back?" "Gun. Let's say we no longer share the same goals, but don't doubt it. They're coming here, just not with weapons, with concrete. They will seal this place forever, and we must be fast. If we want to get out before that happens, why can't you let me go now?" I asked, with a trembling voice. "Because this is a job for two," he said, looking into my eyes. "Things much more important than you, me, or your friend." Maybe he was right, but I couldn't do this and I didn't understand anything. "Who are you?" I asked him. Returning his look, something caught my attention. A movement behind Morrow. It was a creature crawling across the ceiling towards us. Its body vaguely resembled that of a human, but its pale skin, stretched over thin bones and visible veins filled with the same black fluid we saw before. It had no hair or features defined on his face. only bloodshot eyes and lost before we managed to escape from him. But our argument brought him back. It was too late to run away. Moroz noticed my expression, but he wasn't fast enough. The creature lunged at him. He tried to shoot him, but missed and ended up on the ground. The shot was deafening. My ears just rang, and the flash of light blinded me briefly. I wanted to run, but forgot that I was still tied. Amorous, the rope tightened, and I fell turning. I saw the creature looking at me. Moro lay on the ground. I finally managed to unhook, and I threw the useless gun at the creature, hitting its head. He staggered and ran to a warehouse near the chemical lab. I blocked the door with a shelf. The creature tried to get in for a while, but then left, probably to finish off Moroz. I stayed there, curled up in a corner, too scared to move. I don't know how much time passed, but I had a hard time breathing. I thought about staying there, waiting for an end, Pacific, instead of a violent death outside. Then I heard a voice saying my name, the voice of Alalizu. I called, "Thank God. I thought I would die here. You are back." He answered. I went to open the door, but I doubted. "How did you find me?" I asked. "I heard shots, and I came to see Dimitri. Please get out. We have to leave from here." I sat down again. Maybe it was him, but what if not? "They didn't say you were dead. I saw blood. It's not you." "What, Dimitri? Please get out, and let's go." He begged. I decided I wouldn't open the door, but then everything changed. Dimitri said, "Do you remember the cherry tree? I knew you would come back when we were kids. We played in a huge cherry tree. One day we bet who would climb the highest. I almost got to the top, but the branches were too thin. Alex tried to get taller than me and fell, breaking his leg. It was my fault, and we never told anyone. It was impossible for him to know about the cherry tree. If it wasn't him." I opened the door, and there he was, injured, but alive. "You're okay?" I asked. "I've been better." "Let's get out of here," I answered. "It won't be easy." I told him, and I told him what had happened, and that only Moroz had the key upstairs. There were tools and supplies. "Maybe we can find something to cut the chain," he suggested, and I accepted. We gathered our backpacks and equipment, but we were not alone from the stairwell. A creature crawled. I shot it, but it was not alone. We ran to the air pump room and blocked the door. Alex began to cut the chain, while I watched the door. It shook, and I thought I would go through it at any moment until they stopped. I heard them running away. A strong smell invaded the room. "What is that?" asked. "Alex ozone," I answered. "Oh, no, no, no," I exclaimed anxiously, immediately. I noticed that the smell was very similar to the one we perceived when we entered the bunker for the first time, but much, much stronger. My Geiger counter also began to click. "What is happening?" asked Alex. Moro told me about this. He told me to run away. I answered just as I finished speaking. The door received a huge blow, raising dust, and bending outside, we had nowhere to escape to. On one side was a heavy steel door, and on the other who knows what. I had no idea how we would get out alive. "Luckily, Alex, you have the rope?" Still asked, without hesitation. We tied it to one of the bombs. It was difficult at first, with my hands shaking, but then another blow resounded in the room. One of the bolts flew off. I felt a chill, and focused only on tying the knot. We finished, and dropped the rope through the broken vent. We slid down it, but another blow made the door fall to the ground, speed up. Although the rope began to burn my hands, I lost my grip, and fell a few meters, landing on another vent that broke. I fell in another hallway, and when it landed on top of me, we recovered and looked around. We saw an orange door that said, "Decontamination." We were on level 3. It had no handle, just a button on the wall. I pressed it, and the door opened. After a few seconds. We entered a small room with a control panel. I closed the door behind us. A green light came on, and another door opened, inviting us to enter the facility. I noticed the panel had a fresh blood stain. Moroz was still alive. We couldn't go back. Our only option was to keep going. The place was even more destroyed than the upper levels. After a while, we found a room that looked like a makeshift infirmary beds, separated by plastic curtains and some medical equipment. On some beds, there were paper clips. Patient due, quarantine survey team, C patient in coma, alone deceased, 728, patient 6, quarantine survey, team C patient in coma, alone, observation deceased 752 patient, 19 quarantine, massive chest trauma, deceased 4Y04 patient, 7 quarantine, psychotic and unresponsive, mild to moderate frostbite. Order signed to Moro. On the other side, there were empty body bags. We continued towards the lower levels. The rotten smell was unbearable. We entered a room where the walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in something that looked like flesh, with veins running through it. Like in a video game, there were bodies stuck together, wrinkled like insects caught in a spider web. "I think we should go back," Alex said nervously. We backed away, but then we heard something moving in the hallway where we came from. Soon, one of those things appeared, under the beam of my flashlight, looking at us with empty eyes. Then it launched itself forward. It fell dead to the ground, and an empty shotgun shell rolled away. Shortly after, I heard more creatures coming, so we ran shooting at some, but I ran out of ammo. Finally, we reached a long tunnel flooded with water. The creatures almost caught up with us, but when we entered the water, they stopped. They didn't want to follow us. We walked. Who knows how much the freezing water reached our knees. Alex looked worse and worse, complaining of a headache and dizziness. After a while, he collapsed unconscious with no other option. I dragged him through the water. Suddenly I heard a splash behind us. I turned and aimed with the flashlight, but I saw nothing. I moved forward, but the sound continued as if someone was wading through the water at the end of the tunnel. A steel door blocked the way with no visible way to open it. I knocked on the door asking for help. There was no way out. The sounds were getting closer. I saw waves in the water. It was close. I turned slowly and looked at the tunnel, only darkness and silence. Then a familiar smell invaded me. Ozone, a metallic sound behind me. And the door opened. Dimitri said, a familiar voice, "Moroz, who brought him here." He pushed Alex and me to the other side and closed the door. "It's your friend. What happened to him?" he asked, looking at Alex unconscious. "I don't know. Are you okay?" I asked, noticing a large cut on his face. "No thanks to you," he answered. He saw the bandage on Alex's arm and unwrapped it. The wound was a bite. "That's what Moroz said, pointing at them. Get away," he ordered, unholstering his gun. "No, wait. At least tell me what's going on. He'll be dead in a few minutes. This will make it easier for him and for us." "What, please? There is nothing else we can do," I begged. He looked at me, then looked at Alex, and then put the gun away. "Well, maybe this will help," he said, taking out a syringe half full with a clear liquid. He injected Alex. "Although I don't think it matters much," he muttered. "What do you mean?" I asked. "If you can take it if you want, but I don't plan on carrying it," Moro replied as we advanced through the facilities. "All this is related to the disaster 30 years ago," he explained. "The first teleportation machine we used was weak and unreliable. We realized that we not only transport things to another place, but we send them between parallel realities. But there was a limitation. We could only exchange two objects of equal mass, in identical places, in two different realities. So they built a new machine here, using a nuclear reactor to give it more power, hoping it could transport anything. Between two realities, we explored completely new worlds, universes where the Germans won World War II, worlds destroyed by wars, even where there was never life on Earth. But someone had the idea of finding out what was between those universes when they activated the machine. Something went wrong. The portal they opened held itself together. We sent a team to that reality conduit, as they called it. They came back in minutes, but they talked about strange sensations of how space and time seemed distorted. Some said they saw themselves in several places at once, and did not want to return. No matter the threats, the second team sent never came back. The third team came back. But something was wrong with them. They were mentally lost. The image of the creatures we had fought with came to mind a little as a large burst of energy came out of the portal and headed to the reactor. But that was not all. "And how do you know all this?" I asked. "I was in another sector. When it happened, I will never forget when they told us that something had entered our world." "What was it?" I asked. "We do not know it. Killed almost everyone here, but it did not only kill them, it did something else to them." "How have you seen we are here?" he said, entering a control room full of computers and screens, closed the armored door seal inside. "We have to close the portal we tried before. But those things didn't leave us where they are now. When I found out they had returned, I knew something was wrong. This place was full of them. But now I only perceive the smell of ozone. Years ago, anyone who entered did not leave the level alive except for one. But we have come this far, and I don't know why. That's what worries me." He took out a strange device full of cables and loose parts. "We have to take one end of this to the other reality, and then return with the other end. If it works, it could collapse the portal. And what if the same thing happens to us as to the third team?" I asked. "I don't know. But do you know why they built that concrete shield over the reactor? It was not to seal the reactor, but to contain what came in here. The shield cracked years ago, and these things are trying to get out. This could be our only chance to stop them forever. Well, let's do it." I answered. We put on special suits. We left the unnecessary in the control room and entered the machine in the center of a chamber. Domo, there was a sphere of light. Moroz entered the sphere and disappeared. After hesitating a second, I followed it. I found myself in a place impossible to describe. Music. There was no up or down, and it seemed empty, but I saw countless giant shapes with thousands of bright points on their surfaces here. Moroz said, somehow taking me by the arm in front of us. I saw hundreds of white spheres, all portals to other parallel realities. We are going to close them all. Not just ours, the others are not our problem. He answered. We approached a repetitive structure like a fractal that replicated endlessly. Moro began to manipulate the device that began to emit a high-pitched hum. "This is not good," he murmured. "What is happening? I need you to take the other end. Go back and pull this."